going to call to order the April 17th meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board. We have a quorum. Thank you all for being here tonight. So that's the first two items on the agenda. Third item on the agenda, approval of agenda. Does anybody have any adds, deletions, modifications to the agenda that they'd like to propose? Diane?
Thank you. I'd like to take, under the treasurer's report, approval to purchase new office computer, to table that till next month.
Okay. So we'll take that off the agenda. Any others? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. And also, just as a housekeeping item, you notice we're short our administrator tonight, our administrative assistant tonight. She went home ill today, and so she'll be relying on the video of this meeting for the minutes. And so if everyone can make sure to speak into the microphones, and clearly that would be great. So the next item on the agenda is approval of the March 20th meeting minutes. And I will start us off. You know, I don't think that the item 8, the first item under the executive committee, I don't think that that is captured accurately based on my recollection. The board, by my recollection, the board didn't review the fund balance because we received letters. We did that as a matter of practice. So I don't think that that is reflected accurately in this paragraph here. And so what I would like to do is ask Kim to go back through and listen to the meeting minute, or the video again, or the audio, and adjust that.
It also says resend the assessments, not rescind.
Yeah, typos.
Yeah.
And then the other item I have is under the Lake Utilization Committee. She has Mark Gans and George St. Germain, and George wasn't at our board meeting. He was present for the LUC meeting, but not the board meeting, so that should be removed. So those are the items I had. Anything else from anybody? So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with those changes.
Second.
Susie, here, just a second. So we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Yeah,
Susie?
you have on here approval of minutes of February 20th, 2018. I don't see any correction here. It's just kind of says that Mark moved to have them approved, but they were not correct. Nor have they been corrected.
So the motion was to move to approve with the corrections that were discussed in the meeting?
Yes,
And your concern is?
they don't appear there. Nothing appears there as far as what the portion that I asked to have corrected.
And I guess I'm assuming that those are included in the February 20th, 2018 meeting, or minutes.
Well, they,
And we don't have those in front of us. So how do you know that they're not included there?
well, they're not, on number 4, it just says that they were approved. But I asked that all the corrections be made because in the minutes it said that there was a request for the county's measurement of the Harrods property, and that wasn't the case. It wasn't the county's measurement that we were interested in.
Well,
These are January minutes. We didn't have a January.
No.
No, we didn't have January. I was gone in February and was at the March that we didn't approve it.
Yeah, so Susie, do you take exception with this item, moved to approve with corrections. Do you take exception to that, that's
I
not
don't see the
in it?
corrections, so I can't tell you that I approve of them.
Oh, well, she just noted the motion. Was to move to approve with corrections, and that seems accurate to me.
I'd like to see them before they're approved.
Yeah, I got that, yep,
And here's your other stuff.
okay.
Okay, so you want to confirm that the corrections were made?
Correct.
Okay, well, I think that's okay, so that's,
Can we elim-
we're not approving those minutes tonight?
No,
No,
not until we see what they've been corrected to.
right, and it's not, the motion isn't to approve the February meeting minutes. The motion is to approve the March meeting minutes.
Right, but on this March meeting minutes, it says approval of minutes of February 20th, 2018 board meeting, number 4.
You probably should say approve with corrections.
And it says that move to approve with corrections.
All ayes passed, but we don't see the corrections here, so we don't know that the corrections were made.
Right, so point taken.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
So one opposition vote. So that passes. So we're on to item 5, public comment time, and this is 15 minutes that we allow for public input on items that are not on the agenda. And so please step up if you'd like to discuss. And what I'd ask is that you give your name and your address, and then go ahead and tear into your comment.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is John Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. My address is 14010 Homestead Avenue, Homestead Avenue North in Hugo, Hugo, Minnesota, 55038. And for full disclosure here, I'm the Washington County Manager on the Rice Creek Watershed District. I'm not here tonight to speak for the Rice Creek Watershed Board, but rather as the manager from Washington County. And I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about what we can do about the elevation of water in White Bear Lake. Since a good portion of White Bear Lake, the deep side, happens to be in my area where I represent. So I represent Birchwood, Willerny, Matamidi, Delwood, along the lake. And other communities would include Grant, Hugo, Forest Lake, Scandia, and a little bit of May, too. The Rice Creek Watershed District's about 180 square miles, and 90 of it is above the Peltier Dam. If you're familiar with Peltier Lake in Centerville, that's where it used to be Twin Lakes Pavilion. Maybe for some of you that are my age, I guess, we might remember that place. And so I was been here. I voted many years ago for $10,000 to be spent on a USGS study. And when they presented it here, I came into the White Bear Hall and we listened to one of the engineers from Hugo that evening proposed using water. It would run over the dam on Bald Eagle, have it brought up to water quality standards for White Bear, and to bring it back here. I stood up at the meeting and said, well, why don't we take it above the White Bear Lake, above the Bald Eagle, and off of Ramsey County, Washington County ditch number 1. So for you to know where that is, that's on Portland Avenue, and that's if you go over the railroad tracks and there's a dip before you go up the hill, that's where Ramsey, Washington County ditch number 1 is. That's about a 15 square mile watershed. And it's basically, it shouldn't have been marsh, it's become a large reservoir. It's about maybe 6 city blocks away. And with all the comments that are in the paper about the amount of money they want to spend to put water from the surface into the lake, maybe we could look at this. And so I made that suggestion quite a few years ago. I don't remember how long ago, but I remember Mike Parento and I were both here and we talked about different things to do at the time. So I'm here tonight to say to you that maybe with this business, the citizens around the lake, landowners have made a lawsuit. They've won their lawsuit. I had that similar experience 25 years ago involving with the ditches in Hugo. and the northern part of the watershed, trying to get the local unit of government, which is in charge of the drainage ditches, which is the watershed, to do something. The watershed is in charge of the surface water and of water quality. And if you need some reference, there's a Minnesota statute. If you're having trouble sleeping some night, open that up. It's called 103D. And there's one called 103B, and B is where you spend the money on projects. So this is an applicable time for you to think about supporting your local landowners here and building a consortium with maybe your local units of government, such as cities, counties, public health departments, in order to maybe look forward, look at a plan of how to provide surface water that's local into the lake and at a quality standard so that we can recharge the aquifer, and at that point of view. And so that's all I really came to do tonight. I was talking to Mike on the phone. He suggested I come down and give a chat like this. And when I say support, everybody immediately thinks of dollars. I want to remind you that in government, support can often be the letters of support. We do that. We can talk to legislators, county commissioners. You know, years ago, I was told by the Watershed District that they had no plans for a ditch that ran through our farm at home. And so my brother, who dropped out of high school, and myself was an unskilled laborer, we went down to the county and asked for the records. And they said, well, you can't find them. Well, the commissioner that represents my district was walking down the hall as we left, and we said, Dennis Hegberg, I don't know if you remember him or not, and we said to him, Dennis, would you ask the lady in charge of the records department to have a really thorough search for those records? And she did. He did. 2 days later, they turned up the records not only for our ditches, but for the other 7 that were in Washington County that people had claimed they couldn't find. And of course, that gets onto another wrangle with the Department of Natural Resources. But here you're in a similar position. You're going to go to the appellate court. That's going to be a year. The city governments are now worried about their permits. Maybe there's something we can start on a program on our own, but it would take all forms of government to work together with the homeowners. The one good thing the homeowners have accomplished is that they've started a clock. The judge's decision's a clock. It's ticking constantly. Something will have to be done sooner or later, even though it takes a few years in the process, as it's taken them some years. And they also have done a lot of engineering work. They've hired EOR, Emmons and Oliver down in a local firm in Washington County. And they've spent a lot of money that would be the building for much of what you could do there. By the way, EOR is one of our approved 8 engineering firms at the district. So having EOR come forward and make a concept plan would help. So that's all I had as a pitch. I'm here, like I said, just as an individual. And well, I ask you to start to think about alternative methods than just sitting by and letting the court waiting for the clock to tick out.
And John, thank you first for coming here and talking with us about this. Just to make sure that it's clear in my mind, so the idea would be that there is stormwater collected in this area that's on the north side of White Bear Lake, and that water currently flows through a ditch into Bald Eagle Lake. And the idea would be to capture that water in some way, clean it up as necessary, and perhaps reintroduce it into White Bear Lake to help augment the aquifer. Is that the idea?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I think that you know, that's something that would be perfect as far as I'm concerned for our Lake Level Resolution Committee to take a look at and then advise the board as to what kind of action we should take.
I would hope that you'd work with the other folks. When you go to do something in government, it takes a very long time for these local unit of governments to do anything. It does. Just a tremendous amount of time and work. And the more prepared you are, or the landowners are, when they come and make a proposal, and the more support they have from other local government units, whether it be the counties or the cities or the towns, then the better it is. But I think it's a practical solution to be examined and to look at, and I would hope that we could do something instead of just standing by waiting for the appellate court, the year and a half that goes by there, and then another 6 months to the Supreme Court to say yes or no or whatever, or the battle it could be where the appellate court sends it back down to the district court, back to the appellate court, back to the district court. as they say, water's for fighting over and whiskey's for drinking.
Does anybody else have any questions for John? Mike?
John, you're saying that, of course, there is surface water available, or not available, there is surface water near White Bear Lake. Rice Creek knows about it. I think the DNR knows about it. It's just the politics of getting something to happen.
I think that's probably the most important part is the politics of getting it to happen.
And I know you've
It's,
begun a dialogue with the homeowners now.
I've begun a dialogue with the homeowners. Well, I like to think I'm continuing a dialogue with homeowners and the Lake Board and others here. I think we can work forward if we work together.
So you're talking about the homeowners that own the property that this water would go across then, right?
No, I'm talking about the homeowners association that brought the lawsuit. They're the ones that would need to come to the board with a proposal, and I'm suggesting that they start to examine where to receive this water than from the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is local water. That water would come out of what we call Schoenemann Marsh these days. I think that's owned by the Isaac Walton League. In the 1990s, the district on its own, because they, quote, didn't find any records, they dumped 4 feet of concrete in the Portland Avenue culvert and backed the water up there.
Okay.
So if you are a longtime resident of this area, you'll remember that or at least I remember as a child and in high school that, you know, there was that marsh was used for agricultural purposes. There were dairy herds up there. Schoenemann was a dairyman. Streetway was still in business in the 60s. They used to, they call those ranch-fed chickens now, but they always had summer coops out there where the pullets were and such for the hatchery. You know, other things are, but our community's changed since then. You know, that's all houses back in there now. And you can, when you leave downtown Hugo, I think there's the first stoplight you used to reach was 4th Street. That's not, you know, so.
Well, I guess my question was, what's the impact on the property owners between where the water is now and where we want to get it to? I mean, are we going to be taking away backyards from people, or are we going to be?
Well, that's something we have to examine
Yeah.
to see where the right-of-way would be, is what you're asking about.
Yeah.
Where would that right-of-way be? There's some city parks in there, for example. You know, it depends where you look at it. But a concept first is there enough water there? What
How
are
many acres did you say were draining there?
Well, I think there's about 15 square miles in there. So
That's more than White Bear is draining now, probably.
at one time, when I was here that evening, a friend of mine was in the audience who happens to be a University of Minnesota School of Technology's mining engineer professor. And I said to him, Randall, would you figure up how much water comes out of that area, and is there enough for White Bear Lake and for Bald Eagle? And a few days later, he sent me an email. I really don't like email at all, but he did, and he said we could take half of it, and there'd be more than enough for White Bear, and Bald Eagle wouldn't impact them. And remember, White Bear flows out into Bald Eagle. Some folks may not remember this, but about 17 years ago or so, the district cleaned the ditches in the back of on ditch number 11 in order because there was so much water in White Bear at that time that it came out. But White Bear over the years has been augmented, and augmentation wouldn't necessarily mean that we're going to permanently pump all that in there. You can fix the pumps so that they put so much in that's needed at the time, you know, so that it doesn't continue. That's not an unreasonable thing to do. But by cleaning the water above Bald Eagle in Schoenemann Marsh, we will help Bald Eagle in their water quality over the long term without having to add any chemicals to the lake. And we'll also help because Bald Eagle goes into Peltier down in Centerville. Mm-hmm. Peltier is the central station where all the water in the upper 90 square miles of the district goes into. The Peltier Dam is the bottleneck. So I'm suggesting that we take a look at this rather than stand still. And
It's
that's
a
all
great
I'm
idea.
asking.
Now, can you get some information, what kind of specifics that you have, like copies, so you can see where these ditches are, or you have anything that describes your watershed or shows the location of the dam?
Well, not in my at this moment do I have that.
Uh-huh.
But where do you live, Mr. Winter?
Well, and Barton, can I just interject here? I think that what would be a good idea is for the Lake Level Resolution Committee to take a look at this and develop a list of information that they think would be valuable. Because I think that's a great question that you're asking. And so maybe it would be more efficient if we were to develop a list of items that we think would be beneficial for our decision-making process and then pass that along. Because it's probably not just the Rice Creek Watershed District that has information that we would need. It's maybe Ramsey County and others that might have information that would be valuable for the decision-making process.
And, sir, your organization may have information to contribute to it also.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so what I'm asking is we begin this conversation on the local level with the local units of government and in order to move to a resolution. If we're going to wait for the powers at the state to decide that, well, you know, I don't know if I have that much time on the earth left yet.
Okay,
Brian, you said we were going to reconstitute the Lake Level Committee?
Lake Level Resolution
Yeah,
Committee. That's
well,
right.
we'll do that then.
That's what I'm asking, the people to start to think about and approach this from the aquifer, protecting the aquifer. You know, that's one of the specific things the Watershed District is charged with in 103D is number 14 of specific purposes is protection of groundwater. And on 103B, where we have projects, where we do projects and use tax money, then we have water quality. So it's not unheard of that we couldn't do something here, create retention ponds above it or such, and to build a system. We're going to have to do that because there's a lot more people live here now than what used to. And so we have to take a different approach. And if there's one thing the judge, whether you disagree or agree with her, she made a decision that causes action to be taken. So if we're involved in the action, what I found at home when we went in our ditches, it was our engineers that presented the plan for Washington County Ditch Number 2, and that became what was accepted by the district. So if you're expecting somebody to do for you, the only helping hands you have are the ones at the end of your sleeves, so we might as well roll up our sleeves and help ourselves.
All right, well, thanks for coming out and talking to us, John.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Anybody else that would like to comment? Mike?
Brian.
Is there still a couple minutes left?
2.
2 minutes, okay. Brian McGoldrick, 36 Moonlight Bay, Stillwater, Minnesota. I just want to make a couple brief, quick points. You know, the first one being that to be factually accurate, the White Bear Lake Restoration Association brought the lawsuit. The White Bear Lake Homeowners Association was the intervener. The White Bear Lake Restoration Association has 1,000 members. I was a little bit taken back at the last meeting when you talked about the rescission of some money for the cities. And the reason I was taken back about it, when I listened to White Bear, the city talk about it, what I heard them say was different than what you heard them say. What I heard them say is, you have a bunch of money, we don't seem to be doing anything with it. So if they're not going to do anything with it, then why should we give them any more money? And my thought is that there's a lot of things that we could be and we should be doing with the resources that we have. The commercial bay, particularly in front of Lions Park, the muck's 25 feet deep. It's a very, very dangerous situation. You see there's a canoe rack in there. You see people try to get their canoe through. I've seen people go to muck up to their neck. We have them come over to our boat launch. The other thing that you take a look at is the milfoil. I mean, I was very frustrated during the trial when the DNR made the point that the milfoil's not that bad in White Bear Lake because look at this is the 10-year history of permits. They haven't requested any more. Well, I've been in here and I know Mike's tried to get as much as he possibly can. You know, so to take it that we don't have a milfoil problem, I'd like to see us aggressively take that and see if we can treat more milfoil. It is so bad in the commercial bay, you know, I don't even know where to begin with that. And the third point I want to make is that when we think in terms of the OHW, that's the difference between where native plants end and aquatic plants start. That's where the line's formed. Native plants can't allegedly grow. And look at the trees that we have. They're not just brushes anymore. We got trees all along South Shore Boulevard. We have islands out there. And I would rather us take the position that, look, let's put together some plans to correct some of these problems that we have, be it some of them short-term and some of them long-term, and use that money, because to be candid with you, the cities have a lot more money than I do, and we're not talking about globally telling everybody they don't have to pay. You're saying the cities don't have to pay their money, yet an entrepreneur like myself who's hasn't done that well the last 10 years would be to pay. And I think that I'm going to ask that you rescind that to the city, that we put together a short and long-term plan to address some of the problems around the lake. And if you decide not to do it, then I think that, that nobody should have to pay their fees then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian. Sorry for referring to you as Mike, by the way. Well, there you go. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. New business, there is no new business, and there's no unfinished business. So we're on to reports. The first report is the executive committee, and that's, I'll provide that. So a letter to member communities regarding elimination should be of 2018 assessment. My understanding is those letters were sent out to the 5 member communities. So they should be aware of that right now, or by now. The second item is a response letter to City of White Bear Lake and Birchwood. Just as a little bit of background, City of White Bear Lake sent a letter to the board, and that was included in the March board packet. And so you all saw that, but just to summarize, they're asking that we reduce our fund balance, and they take exception to the percentage that we identify in our fund balance policy. We prepared response letters, and those are in front of you. And I also sent these out by email because I didn't get them in the packet. But I guess what I'm interested in is if anybody has any major concerns with the letters. I'd prefer not to write them by committee, but they are on behalf of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board. So does anybody have any comments regarding those letters? Okay, so we will send those out. The next item is Birchwood Village meeting. The executive committee met with the city of Birchwood Village, and it's similar to how we've met with the other 4 community members, with the exception of Delwood, who we talked with over the phone. And I'm just going to summarize that meeting quickly. Basically, we asked them the same questions as we asked the other communities, and here some input that I had written down from the meeting. Concerns by Birchwood. One is that the board's schedule for approval of the Birchwood dock applications, that was delayed a little bit on our side, and and I don't even know that that's accurate, but it was delayed. And it was basically a communication issue, and that caused the city of Birchwood Village some issue. And so we've committed to, and they have as well, committed to communicate better. The other item was the 2018 assessment, which we've already discussed. And then as far as then they also asked us to reach out to them on particular dock issues if we think it would be helpful to have their support, input. And then this question, what would they like the Conservation District Board to focus on? And it was climate change and the effects of climate change on the lake. And they are generally happy with the board's activities. So that's a summary of the Birchwood Village meeting. And then the last item is the agreement with Ramsey County Sheriff's Office for supplemental law enforcement services. And this is an annual agreement that we enter into with the Sheriff's Office, and that was included in your board packet. And our intention is to sign that and get that into effect. Does anybody have any questions on that supplemental law enforcement services agreement?
Does that specify the rate they charge?
Yes.
$41 an hour.
And how does that compare?
You know, I don't recall what the rate was last year, but the total that they're anticipating is $4,920, which is within our budget.
My understanding is that in the past, they've used a lot of, not volunteer, but like reserve officers to do this job. And Ramsey County is no longer using those reserve officers. The fee did go up. I don't know the exact amount, but that's the reason being. And they've been trying to hold it off for as long as they can. They've been telling us the last 3 or 4 years that it's going to go up, it's going to go up, it's going to go up, and this year it finally triggered.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much it went up.
Yeah, I should know that,
$41.
but it did go up.
Okay, so that's the executive committee report. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll move on. The next item is the Lake Level Resolution Committee status. Well, status, that's not the right word there. So the Lake Level Resolution Committee has been reconstituted. Jeff is the chair of that, and Barton is the second member from the board on that committee. And I just sent them some background information on that committee, and so they are just in the process of getting that going again. And I don't know if either of you have anything to comment on at this point, but if you do, please chime in.
Obviously, we have opportunities with Rice Creek that should be promising, so.
No, I didn't, it seemed like I only got like a graph or something. You were promising a packet or something a little more substantial? I don't know, but is that what I'm looking for?
So what I sent was the document that, the resolution that established the committee. So that gives all the background on the committee and, the different members. And then I also, in the body of the email, provided basically a brief history of the committee. So if you didn't see that, just let me know, Barton, and I can resend that. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the Lake Quality Committee, and that's Mike.
Lake Quality, in front of you, you should all have the Blue Water Science bid for lake survey. And that includes scout for nuisance milfoil throughout the lake, ranging from 10% to 100% based on the area. Prepare a electronic GPS map so that the DNR can read it and the applicator can put it into his computer and apply it in the correct areas. Then after that's done, he'll do a recheck of everything and give us an assessment of that, and he'll do water quality and also a plant survey of the lake. And he'll bring it to a meeting in the fall, and he produces a booklet like this that you'll get electronically, and if you want to have one printed out, Kim can print it out for you. And it's got all the information in here, lake levels, all 7 years history on where we've treated, and also the maps where we're treating this year. And this year, we've initiated a little more aggressive approach to it, and we're going to treat a little bit earlier and a little bit deeper, and maybe with a little bit heavier dosage. I've got bids from the applicator, and there's 5 different choices. And again, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. With this bid, which I will ask for approval for, these are the things that Steve does for us, but that's just part of it. He also qualifies all the different types of chemicals that we use. He gives me or anybody who would want to ask through me advice on lake situations all year long. We had that LJ Bloom, and he came out and looked at that, and it was a filamentaceous, I can't get the word right, LJ Bloom that we had, which was not a big concern. It goes away by mid-season. We may have that again this year. He does just all sorts of things. He keeps us keeps us in mind all year long, and we can ask him questions, and then at the end of the year, we can ask him anything we want about stuff. So it's a worthwhile thing. Also, he does work all over Minnesota and in Wisconsin. When he does the surveys and that, the DNR usually just takes what he says and then qualifies the amount or whatever else we ask Steve to present to him. So I think he's given us a good deal. So I would like to have this approved. I'll make a motion in a second. It's for $3,100, and we have budgeted for this particular survey, we have budgeted $3,200. So it's $100 less. So I would like to make a motion that we accept the bid for survey, follow-up, and produce a booklet and come to the meeting and explain everything. And that for $3,100, and that comes out of the fund number 6036. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the quote from Blue Water Science. Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Mark?
I know we've talked about, because it is, I agree with Brian, it's the worst thing on the lake. It's why some people won't jump in the water. It's, if you've got a small sailing craft and your knife board goes through it, you're pretty much at a standstill. Can we discussed having 2 applications. Was that part of it?
Okay, part of it, you were getting, this is what I'm going to present next week. I hope to have a spreadsheet and everything on the different types of applications that we can use. We generally treat 3 to 4 feet. This year, we're going to treat at 8 feet. Those are the quotes I got for 8 feet. And we're going to treat in a much heavier dosage. I talked with the DNR at length. I got a bunch of time into this, but that's neither here nor there. And they said that you can treat up to, they will allow up to whatever the label says for the particular agent that we use to treat it. And so I got the bids for a heavier dosage than we've been using, almost double the dosage, deeper. Now, it's going to be a late ice out, so we're probably not going to have time for 2 treatments.
You can apply it with a tractor.
Yeah, right. And so what we're going to do is we're going to apply it heavier and deeper, and the applicator says that's actually a better system than what you've been doing, because you want it to take in the agent that we're using while it's growing. And if you do it earlier in the season and you treat it heavier, obviously it will be growing then. And so you catch it when it's an infant plant, rather than wait till it's mature and try to hit it with a lower dosage. We're going to use a higher dosage on a younger plant. So we're being a little more aggressive in that area. We're going to treat pretty much 62 acres right off the bat, because we know it's a perennial 62 acres. And then we're going to look for additional areas besides that. Now, we get into some situations, and again, it's a DNR, and it's kind of our policy too, is that when you get in and around private docks, like inside somebody's AUDA, we don't treat, because that's their responsibility. Might be a little bit for what you're talking about, Brian. We can't go in around the docks and treat or in the ADUAs of the commercial areas. Okay. The DNR doesn't allow it. The only place they allow treatments close to shore is on public beaches.
Thank you.
Susie?
Mike, at one time we had spoken about having a very early application in those really dense areas before the actual application, so that would be cut down.
Early is out the window this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, as soon as the ice
Maybe
is out.
next year.
Yeah.
We talked about with the DNR, the applicator, and Steve McComas, and they all say, by the time the ice is out and we get out there, it's going to be in May, and we're going to get out there in May and do the application. We're going to get it in, usually we've been getting the application in around the July 1st in that area. We're going to try to get it in the first week in June.
Okay.
So substantially whole different approach this year.
It'll help the sailors a lot more.
It'll help everybody, yeah.
And can everybody remember to speak into their microphones, please?
It'll help everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mike? Bart?
Yeah, this is a preliminary assessment, so how much do you, being new to this committee, what is the amount set aside for this treatment? And
we have budgeted $36,000.
Okay, thank you.
When we get to that, which will be at the next meeting, once I get the prices, actually I do have the prices, and they're much higher than last year. I may ask for a little more. What I plan to do is a scenario: this many acres will cost this much, this many acres will cost this much, and we'll start with a base of 62 acres because we know we're going to treat that.
What location on the lake is this area that you're treating?
I can give you a map, which I have here.
Okay.
Barton, just for your information, it's spread around the lake. There are several troubles, regular trouble spots, and then they also, through this assessment, they look for other areas where milfoil looks like it's being established, and then they treat all of those areas.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mike? Any other input or information from you, Mike?
If this gets approved, I have one more item.
Oh, we're still on, I'm sorry, we're still on a motion with discussion, my fault. So we still have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So that motion passes. Mike, any other items?
Okay, this is the time of year where we send out the swimmer's itch letter to all the communities so that they can have the first free treatment for swimmer's itch at the public beaches. I will ask Kim to please send that letter out, and I'll contact her during the week.
And Mike, can you talk for just a moment about that program that we fund?
Okay. Quite a while ago, because we've done it for a long time, the board made a motion that every spring we would offer the first treatment for swimmer's itch, and that we would offer it to the cities at their public beaches only. And we've done it for a number of years, and so since it was voted that we would do it every year, it just kind of happens. We budget for it, it's budgeted. Sometimes it's less than the budget, and sometimes it's more than the budget. We're not talking about a big swing. We budget $500 for it. I don't think we've ever been twice that. Diane would know that right off the top of her head.
And the reason I ask that, Mike, is because I've heard from member communities how appreciative they are that we provide that.
Well, that's good. That's good. If there's a second treatment necessary, that's on the city's dime then.
Anything else, Mike?
That's it.
Any questions for Mike? Okay, we'll move on. Lake Utilization Committee, Mark?
Mr. Chairman, Board, first on the agenda is all the public docks in City of Birchwood Village. And went through, same as last year, and our committee approved. It did come in late, but they were having some issues internally with the city and things. So we did waive the $50 late fee for their application. And I move to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Chair and Board, the next one is Lake Avenue Properties, previously Sampere. It's the 31 feet in front of Aqua Restaurant. And there was some debate about it. Originally, before the water got low, they had 6 docks, 6 boat slips, and they were renting them. Then when the water got too low, it was too difficult to maneuver in there, so we allowed them to put it at the end of tallies. Somewhere that 6 went to 12 and then back to 10, and I wish I had a better answer for why that happened, but we always did say that once the water comes back, all these commercial docks are going back to their traditional place where they were functioning fine at ordinary high water. So we did discuss an option that they could possibly have 8, because the city does have an ordinance that it's 1 boat for every 4 feet of shoreline, even though they don't abide by that themselves as the city. But that would allow 8 boats, and we would probably have them move back to their traditional spot along the City of White Bear Lake docks. Unfortunately, the city, all the commercial bay, all the property owners are required to have a letter from the City of White Bear Lake saying that they meet all the city landside ordinances, and this packet did not come with that. I could approve it pending saying that we get that letter. I don't know when the ice is going to go out. It might possibly go out before the next meeting. It doesn't seem like it will.
Maybe.
But, yeah, I would motion to approve the 8-dock layout along the city's dock. So it would look like, this would be the picture. And traditionally, these were, not these ones along the top, but traditionally, these 6, that's where they always were. So I would move to approve pending the approval from the city of White Bear Lake.
I'll second that. And so we have motion and a second. Any discussion? Alan?
Mr. Chair, I think instead of approval of the city, what you're really looking for is certification from the city, right?
Yes, sir.
So, assuming all things are equal, I read through the application, there aren't any changes from what there were before. I think most of the board knows how Sampaire qualified with the parking, which is really what we're looking to the city to certify. So, I have no problem with it, but we're not looking for their approval.
So the motion, one word in the motion changes to
Certification.
city verification.
Certification of surface parking to support the docks.
Understood.
Right? Good.
Thank you.
Mike?
So you move for approval, but you mean in front of their own property, not at in front of their own property and no longer at the end of Tally's dock?
Correct, in their own ADUA, not in Tally's ADUA, and not at the end of Tally's dock.
And so there were several layouts provided, it seems to me, if my understanding is correct. And this one, this option 3, that was in the packet, up here in upper left, it's option 3.
Correct.
So that's the one that I believe that we're talking about here. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve pending receipt of a letter from the city certifying that they meet the city's requirements. And any further discussion?
Do they have insurance in here?
Yeah, they did, there was insurance in the packet. It's $500,000,
Okay. That's right.
I recall.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Anything further, Mark?
That's it, thank you.
Lake Education Committee, Scott?
Yeah, we have, as we passed at the previous meeting, a website redesign, which includes setting up a Facebook page. That's almost done. It's actually out there. It's kind of secret. I followed it. I think Kim will send out an email when we want you to all go in there and like it and follow it. In terms of the website itself, I saw in the packet there's this email from Kim to Wirebuilt. Maybe it's just in my pile.
No, everybody got it.
Oh, okay, so they've got this? It's a wish list of what we'd like to see in the website. So if you have any more suggestions, I would say send them to Kim. Third item there is, on our website has a scrolling photo pane right in the front, and those pictures have not changed in like 3 years. And so we want to get some new pictures. Kim sent out an email to the board on that. I think we would first go to the board and see what photographs you have. And Irena did tell me that they want big pictures, like, 2,500 pixel width, high-res things, or more as a minimum. And so if I think I would propose that we first see what the board can do, and then we'd have to decide if we want to go public, asking people to say, send pictures in, Or we could search through photo sites such as Flickr and ask people for permission to use the pictures. We have to be a little bit careful here in terms of copyrights. In general, we want to make sure that if somebody gives it, that they're giving us the copyright to use them, and they aren't misusing somebody else's copyright.
How many photos are you looking for?
Not quite sure.
I think I can handle it.
Okay, well,
I'll just
a
send,
bunch.
I'll send you what I
I
got.
think I think we want to broaden it a little bit. I think we have a lot of pictures of sailing. I think I'd like to see some kind of wildlife conservation kind of thing, because we are a conservation district. I would also like to see pictures of some of the events that we permit, you know. I think that would be interesting. And we really haven't talked about how many we need or what we're going to do with them. That's why I'm thinking go to the board first before we start, going public with begging for pictures.
And I suppose we could accumulate a bunch of photos and then change them out over time as well.
Yeah, I think you'd want to do that because it gets really boring fast. I mean, if you look at a scroll like on MSN or something, I mean, it's news, but, you see these pictures flowing by and it's different every day. And that's the kind of thing that brings people back to your website. We see in our web stats that it's dropping. So we want to get the information people want to come back for. We need to keep refreshing the web design once we get this set up. So that's where we are.
Okay. Anything further?
Nope.
Any questions for Scott? Okay, thank you, Scott. And we're on to the treasurer's report. Diane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have the treasurer's report for April 2018. I'd like to make a motion to accept checks 4482 through 4488.
What, 42nd? 4485 is on the bottom? They just out of sequence?
Oh, I see, it's just out of sequence.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
The new math.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Thank you. Next, I handed out a budget planning sheet. And it gives you some history of previous budgets, this year's budget, and if you would, I would like you to kind of consider how much you're going to need for 2019's budget, and either email myself or Kim, and then we'll kind of put together a budget for next meeting, and then in June, we have to approve it and send it to the cities. So this is just kind of a worksheet for you to give me some idea of what you think each committee is going to need. So, text me, email me, Instagram me.
Any questions for Diane? Okay, thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
The next item is the board council report, and just before we get to that one, Susie, just because of the conflict of interest for this one, would you mind going to the other side?
Not at all.
Thank you. Alan?
Chair and board, recently you asked me, actually, I think it was an email that I got from the board, to make inquiries of the Herod and Mahoney matter as it related to a request from last summer. Barton, for your benefit and possibly for our other new board member, there was a long-standing dispute between a couple of neighbors that resulted in the board essentially telling each party to place their docks in the center of their property, pending a property registration by one of the parties. So that concluded not too long ago, and long story short, that didn't quite resolve the issue, so we still sent out another order directing where the docks would be placed relative to the properties. And so everyone had done that, I believe, to the satisfaction of this board last summer. And one of the final requests made last July was some sort of certification or something official from Washington County, where of course that property anyway is in. This is all happening in Birchwood, by the way. And so since that time, that material's been a little bit slow to be generated, so I sent another notice asking for that. And what you've got in the packet that you got that wasn't part of the packet was not only a response from the property owner, but also some other materials, Exhibit A to the deed that put that party into title of the property. The next page obviously shows a drawing depicting the property itself. The next page is actually a photograph of essentially the same tracks along the lakefront there, and then finally a detail of the original plat at the end. And so the letter, if you had a chance to go through it, explains those in some detail. Essentially, it does confirm what I think the board was taking as, well, for granted as far as what they thought the property was, which of course all these lake tracks have 50 foot of frontage. There was some discrepancy there. I've even looked at the deeds, and it probably wasn't 50 for that particular one. Even the evidence in your packet there shows a sort of a restriction or a crowding of teeth, if you will. So instead of having 50 next to the K Street easement, it probably is less, and it is less. So there is a 10-foot triangle, they call it, that's carved out, and then through the registration action, the neighbors to the north actually gained another 3 feet. And so by and large, we're looking at probably somewhere between 36 and 37 feet is what they have left, and that seems to me anyway to satisfy what your purposes were, in other words, where to put the dock. And I believe that it was Mark that went out with the assistance of some other board members and essentially moved the dock for these property owners another couple of feet to the south, which I think the board felt fairly good about that placement, and I think that this confirms what we were looking for. So to my satisfaction anyway, it's in, so I would stand for any questions on that.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Seems straightforward anyway. So anyway, unless you have any other chores for me to take offline relative to this, I'll consider that to be a done matter. With respect to the lake litigation, I'm sure you all read the local paper, and so if you aren't aware of what happened with the appeal, which wasn't really an appeal, really it was more a request from the DNR and the cities to actually amend the findings from that decision that Judge Marinan made, and those that request anyway, or those requests were denied by the judge. And so of course that introduces a slightly different posture of appeal, because now they could appeal the decision not to make those amended findings. And of course, there's also the possibility of an appeal of the underlying decision. So stay tuned that way. And you're probably familiar with Senator Chamberlain's bill, which actually talks about putting sort of a moratorium on the DNR from doing anything with regard to those water permits. That has gotten second reading as amended, and so that's still in committee essentially, and it's gaining a couple of authors, so most around here will know Senator Uyghur. So he's recently signed on, and then Senator Bingham, I think, was the latest one, and there's also now a corresponding House bill. So stay tuned, or a companion bill, I should say. And that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Alan? Okay. No, Susie, thanks. We're not going to take public comment on that. Thank you, Alan. So we're on to item 9, and we'll just wait till Susie gets back in position here. Okay, we'll move on then. Diane? That's it. And if you could speak into the microphone.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Announcements. As I mentioned, Kim, I'll take this one. Kim is sick. And then also, there's a jacket over there, leather jacket that was left after our last meeting. If it belongs to anybody, please claim it. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, there's a black one.
Second.
That's probably Pat's.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion, so I did not make the motion. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make the
move we
motion.
adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second.
Second.
To adjourn, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
That might be Pat's leather jacket.